I think for challenge, it's not necessarily a new one, but it's one that is for the ages. It's making sure that you have the right people in the right role in the right time. And by that, an example is I came back 3 years ago to the organization, and we were doing business development more for later stage deals. And one of the big changes for us as a company, we're focusing on science, and we're focusing on early stage science. So one of the changes I did with the group was finding people who had PhDs, MDs, but very much a very strong science background for the roles we had. So, it doesn't mean the people that were in these prior roles weren't the right people. It means for that point in time, we had to get additional skills and different set of skills for what we're looking for. So I think that's probably the key challenge, making sure that you continuously make sure that people are in the right roles, but also they're continually challenged and motivated, because organizations change all the time, their strategy changes all the time. So I think making sure that those people are still in those right roles, because a decision's made up top and then no one cascades further down the organization, but everyone stays in the same roles, right? So I think being clear about that is important. Trends is an interesting thing, because I think the world we live in is changing faster and faster every day, and technology is one example. So I think the workforce itself and the expectations are changing. So I think if you're a recent graduate, or if you're someone with a particular set of skills, I think knowing that having the adaptability and flexibility are key traits for any employer. And it depends on the type of company you join as well, but I think there's more diversity in the type of companies today versus, say, 40 years ago, where there was fairly hierarchical progression within companies. You had to have done X amount of time. But I think today, since the dot-com period, you can have CEOs as young as 20, even teenagers. So it's a very different world and dynamic we live in. So knowing your position within that time change is important, and that flexibility, those skill sets that you bring could be very valued. And so never undervalue what you bring to the table, but at the same time, know what you can also bring to an organization that has been there for many years and people with many years of experience. So it's that fine balance of having what we call EQ, knowing what you can bring and why you're considered valuable, but also the way the organization operates, and sort of getting that fine balance. Yeah, certainly with startups, I think anyone you speak to will say the US certainly has a better environment, because there's better funding, there's more precedence, there's specific biotech hubs. For example, you could Boston, look at San Francisco. We're trying to build our own within the Maryland, DC, Virginia area as well. So where there's natural support and structure, it always helps. And when there are established venture capital firms to help support these startups, makes a big difference as well. So I think if you look at Europe, it's certainly behind where the United States is, not because it started behind, but in the sense that there isn't as much established hubs. Cambridge being an exception. We're here today in Cambridge, where I think there is a strong hub, and that would be comparable, I think, to Boston and San Francisco. But on a whole, it's not as widespread, I think, the biotech infrastructure. And certainly the amounts of money that you get from VC firms is not as large at this point in Europe, although that is changing as well. I think for Asia, it's a whole different animal. It's still changing quickly, but where Asian markets do well is they learn quickly. So I know in markets such as Singapore, where they've trying to build out hubs, and even in some countries such as Korea and Taiwan, there's a lot of infrastructure support for the biotech sector. So I think the advantage of being in Asia is that they may not be as well structured, but they can move fairly quickly and learn quickly as well, which is something historically they've done quite well.